Hello, this is Lee Anthony Davis here on my YouTube channel. Uh, I've got to say this about Doctor Who. What direction is it bloody going in, and who is it projecting the audience to? Which audience is it sort of trying to communicate with? It's certainly not with me. I mean, the giggle emphasises what the word means, doesn't it? It's having a giggle at me, probably, because I'm also the audience, and unfortunately for me, I don't think it's aimed at me. I think it's aimed at a different kind of audience, you know. It's obviously a political group, isn't it? So obviously all this immersion bullshit has gone into it, and I'm going to go into some details why I've got to tell you this. I am a fan, right? I've been watching it for a long time. I'm like many others that enjoyed the show over the years and stuff like that. But what I can't understand is what the hell have I been watching, and why has it been done in that way? You know, I expect Doctor Who to have one, a good plot, two, no sort of silly music, three, anything that synchronises properly. You know, like the plot with the characters, with the sort of direction that it's meant to go in. And four, what is it saying to me? You know, I couldn't get my head round it. I just couldn't get my head round it. I'm looking at all the 60th anniversaries, right? And I thought to myself, right, I watched the first one, Star Beast. I thought, okay, I'll give it a chance. Uh, we'll see how it goes from here. I'll get into details in a minute on that one, and then I looked at the wild blue yonder, is it? Where they're on a spaceship on the edge of the universe, and I thought to myself, it's all right. And then they had some sort of horrible, shall I say, building up tension with something on the ship with them. That's quite good. That's a good way to do it. And then we come to the giggle. Now, what I was sort of emphasised to me, the emphasis to me that I was meant to, what I saw in all the ads and everything about this show, the promotion, everything, I thought I was going to get something spectacular. I thought, I know where the regeneration will be, it'll be at the end. And I thought, well, Donna Noble will be killed off, and it ain't a bad thing. And also, what's mostly important is, do not shoehorn the prospective doctor into the show too early, because whatever he does and whatever he says will stay with him from day one. In other words, he might have lost the audience there and then. It's called bad timing, obviously, but it's the way they did the regeneration. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that first. I'm going to go into this. Right, now, from the beginning of Doctor Who, which started in 1963, as you know, well, I wasn't around when it started, so I can't be a sort of true fan, can I? I'd started watching it about 1973. 1973 when I started to watch it more, because that's when I understood it. If I was watching it before that, I wouldn't have understood it. And it was just after the black and white days are over, and colour was coming in. So I might have seen, I think the only recall that I can look back on is the Crotons, because I was in my pram then, and I was watching it, and I didn't know what to make of it. It was this quarry or type or whatever it was, and Patrick Troughton came out with his two companions, and I thought to myself, what is this? I don't know what it is. You know, I couldn't understand it, too young to understand it. So anyway, in the future, I had that memory, and I sort of traced it back, and I started to see what was the story, and then it clicked. This is the story, the Crotons, because I remember the quarry. You know, I was watching it from my pram. It has to be this one. Nothing else relates. So that was the very first time I ever saw it. But when I first watched it, when I was younger, it would have been in the John Pertwee era. You know, that's when I watched it. I think it was his final season as well. And I took to it very well. I liked it. I thought John was very good. He seemed like it was the kind of person you can trust. Everything will be okay with John in charge, and it was. And then we came to his final regeneration, his final adventure, which led to his regeneration. And I was sad to see him go because, like, I was with a few friends watching it around the television set. I got invited to watch it. I think I was about 7 or even 5 or whatever, but I wanted to watch it, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, oh, and I had tears in my eyes because John Pertwee was gone. He's no longer. And then we had this other character. I didn't know who he was, but we now know. It turned out to be Tom Baker. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, I'm going to get hype back to the very beginning, 1963. Right. 1963 was a year of everything, wasn't it? It was the 1960s taking off. You had the Beatles, you had all sorts of things like the Profumo affair, and you also had the great train robbery, and also you had miniskirts. We went First Men in the Moon, President Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, and so on and so on and so on. And then smack bang in the middle of all that, from 1963, we had this new television show, a science fiction show about an old man in a box travelling through time and space. Now, if I'd have seen that in the Radio Times, I would have looked at that and thought, oh no, what the hell? No, I think I'll leave it, because I wouldn't have understood it. So obviously it has to gain momentum, and it has to gain an audience for people to understand it, so people enjoy it. And it did. I believe it did very well when it first came out. And it had some good actors. It had Jacqueline Hill, it had William Russell, as well as Carol Ann Ford, and of course legendary William Hartnell, who I know is a good actor because he's done so many films, Brighton Rock and Carry On, and he's been a real he's one of those characters that you sort of would find as a Sergeant Major type. He was in Hell Drivers as well, and that was a classic with Sean Connery and all the other people in it. Right, so anyway, I'm not going to go down there. I'm just going to explain. William Hartnell's a great actor. He's done so many great films, the old black and whites, The Ealing and stuff like that. He's probably one of the top draw for Doctor Who to have to take the central role, because Bill at the time was sort of in between. He wasn't offered many parts because he'd seen that he'd grown old, and there wasn't many sort of parts for an actor like him of his status could play. He got attention from Verity Lambert when he did Sporting Life, with also starring Richard Harris, a young Richard Harris anyway, and he played that part perfectly as the agent, and that's what got Verity Lambert to think this guy is Doctor Who. And obviously William Hartnell needed convincing. Anyway, he took the role, and there was a load of problems. Lime Street, Studio D, had a tendency to, they had a tendency with sprinklers on the wall to go off. And unfortunately, it disrupted the programme, and they had a lot of trouble making the first adventure about the time and space, and ending up in the Stone Age, or I think it was the Neolithic period. No, it's before that, the Paleolithic period, when the first humans started to walk on the earth and discover fire, and then they started to get civilized, to take us into the Paleolithic period. No, that's taking us into the Neolithic period, which is when they formed towns and stuff like that. I'm not going into geography and history with you, but anyway, that is basically what it is. They went back in time, and he ended up basically when man was just progressing. He's just discovering fire, and you think to yourself, is that really science fiction? Is that worth watching? Well, it is when you've got good actors that make it work. And obviously the next one was an even better one, because it introduced us to probably one of the oldest foes, and is also synonymous to Doctor Who, the Daleks. At the time, Sidney Newman was saying no bug-eyed monsters and all that business, but Verity Lambert sold him the idea, and sold the public the idea, and she was very good as a showrunner, which was then known as a producer. But anyway, Sidney Newman's sort of confidence in Verity Lambert was just because he put his neck on the line, because she was going to be the first ever woman producer, and she was very young as well, remember, to take on a show which would probably have some significance as the years roll on. So anyway, she was in the spotlight, and her head was also on the chopping block. So she knew if it failed, that would be the end of her career there and then. So anyway, it didn't fail. It went on to strength. We saw great stories, historical dramas added in, the Aztecs, the French Revolution, known as the Reign of Terror, and then we moved into the second season, which they brought in the first shocker, didn't they? They got rid of Susan, the granddaughter of the Doctor. She was left behind on Earth, modern Earth in the future, 2050, I think it was, and she stayed there, and she was written out. And then we had Vicky, played by Maureen O'Brien. She came into it, and then we said goodbye to Ian and Barbara at the chase. It was always a Dalek adventure that saw the end of the companions, didn't it? As I will go on. That was 1965, and then we move on to 66, and obviously Hartnell's health was deteriorating, and they had to find another doctor. But luckily, William Hartnell recommended Patrick Troughton because he'd worked with him so many times before, and he knew what an actor he was. And he said, if obviously you know this now, it's a footnote in history. He said, if I was to choose the next doctor to play my role, it would have to be Patrick Troughton, and he was right. He chose the role for Patrick Troughton. So Patrick Troughton had no problem being recognised. He was also a famous actor. He started off doing live television, believe it or not, in the old days. It was all live television, and so basically, Patrick Troughton was made for the TV camera. You know, a lot of actors who was in the theatre felt it was demeaning to cross over from theatre to television, because they felt that, you know, it wasn't sort of credibility. But anyway, it was like selling yourself short. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Television eventually overtook the theatre, and you could have Shakespeare in your home and all that business. So anyway, there you have it. So Patrick Troughton took the role over from poor health William Hartnell, and Patrick Troughton at the start wasn't sort of you know, it's a 50-50 whether he'd make it as with the audiences, but he was a well-known face, and that's what won him, because a lot of people followed his work from show to show, and from television programme. He was on television many times. He's done Danger Man. He worked with Patrick McGoohan, and he'd done Hammer Horror. I think his last one was The Viking Queen. He was in that. He was also in Jason and the Argonauts. So he has done, you could say, he has covered the whole thing. And he also did live television in the late 50s, because they couldn't, and it shows how good he was when he didn't make any mistakes, because you surely, camera shy people can get nervous, stuff like that, and fall to pieces. But Patrick Troughton was hard, and as you know, like John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton fought in the war as well, and his I think his ship got torpedoed by a U-boat or something, but he survived. John Pertwee was lucky; he was out, he'd gone ashore before his boat got blown up or something like that. So anyway. So let's get back to the point. Patrick Troughton did it until 1969. He had a number of companions, being the well-known one, the best-known one with the audiences is Jamie McCrimmon, played by Fraser Hines, who, you know, goes on to do Emmerdale Farm and many other things as well. We also had Zoe Harriott, played by Wendy Padbury, who became an agent for Paul McGann in years ahead. You know, that's how he got the role as the Doctor in the movie, because she was an agent for him. That's what she did. She retired from acting and went into agents representing actors. So anyway, here we go. Patrick Troughton comes to the end of his tether with Doctor Who because he wants to do other stuff. He also believes that the format and the schedule was too much, and it sort of made him lifeless, and he was getting, well, you could say the word is pissed off, and so he had enough. And obviously they asked Fraser to stay on, but he didn't want to know, because he also wanted to go at the same time as Patrick Troughton, because he felt that it would be odd trying to sort of be the assistant to a new Doctor who might not bounce off him as well as he did with Patrick. So he decided to go along with Wendy. She went as well. So it was like a new era building up. I'll be honest with you, the ratings weren't very good for Doctor Who towards the end of 1968, 69, and the ratings were falling off. Not as bad as you would get today, but it was bad enough. It was bad enough. And it was enough to convince the BBC that a change was needed, and they did. There's a lot of changes coming in the 1970s. We had Collar, that was a big change. Obviously, there was strikes all over the place, so therefore you had a problem with getting everything done on time, on schedule. It was usually to do with prop boys and stuff like that that caused the problems. In other words, if an actor wanted to move a chair, he had to go and ask a prop man to do it. He couldn't do it. And I find that totally bloody ludicrous, but it was the power of the unions in them days. Remember, if you were living in the 70s, you had power cuts and everything. It was all union power before Margaret Thatcher came along and smashed a lot of them, and that was the end of the unions, you could say. Anyway, so that was a new change, a new direction. John Pertwee comes in, and he hits the right note with the audience with this new Doctor, this version of Doctor, and he's obviously nailed the part there and then. But he was always famous. I mean, like Patrick Troughton and William Hartnell before him, he had been in television a long time. He'd done loads of films. He actually appeared with William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton, I believe, in earlier sort of not sort of big films, but he appeared in as a sort of walk on, or he'd actually had a few lines to say. But it was John also was in the Navy Lark. That's a radio show with Ronnie Barker and all the other great comedians of the past, because John was known as a comedic actor. He was not a serious actor like you could say. He wasn't in the same class as Laurence Olivier, obviously, but he was a good actor, and that is what you needed. You don't want someone who's sort of overbearing and sort of unapproachable, because that's what you got with some actors. They have an ego problem. Anyway, so John Pertwee took the role on, and we were in the Collar era, and then we had all these new monsters, because the old ones in the black and white began to be a bit flat, so they decided to bring in some new ones. And we had some Terence Dicks was a great writer, legend in writing circles, obviously, and then Barry Letts, who was a director, who actually directed one of the early adventures, Enemy of the World, became the producer, the showrunner, and he took over from Derek Sherwin, who appointed John Pertwee, but says to Barry Letts, I'm off. ITV have offered me a better deal, and so it's all yours, mate. And so that's what happened. And I think Neil Innes was head of drama at the time, and there's a guy called Sutton who was also got on with Barry Letts, and he was head of drama as well. So Barry didn't have any problems with from up there at the top, as I say. So anyway, Barry Letts took it over. John Pertwee came in, and then we had Katie Manning coming in as assistant, and then we had obviously Roger Delgado as a master. Then we had the unit starting to get more into the adventures with Nicholas Courtney as Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, who was Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart because he got promoted through the ranks, remember. He was Colonel in the invasion, and I think he was Lieutenant, I don't know. But his first appearance, obviously, was the Web of Fear in 1967 or 68. Anyway, that was the first time we saw Unit as well, fighting the Yetis. So anyway, you have Captain... was he called Richard Franklin playing Captain Yates, and then also John Levine was always in it as well, but he was actually one of the Yeti, dressed up as a Yeti in 1968. That was him. And he didn't get to play a unit soldier or unit, be part of unit. He didn't have much to say. He was in the invasion, but he didn't have a lot to do. You only saw him a few times in that. But then he got more as it went along in 1917. He became a part of the regular cast. Because John Pertwee said he was okay, and I like him. Let him give him more. So it's down to John Pertwee that John Levine got a lot of stuff. Because he was seen as a stompman, type of thing. But stompman turned actor type of thing can happen in them days. Anyway, John was coming to the end of his time as Doctor Who. Now, there's a story going on that he actually asked head of BBC, I think it was, I can't remember what his name was, but anyway, he went to him and he says, "Look, I'm prepared to stay on for another season, but you must understand I'm getting roles, and if I don't take them, I might not get them again. Basically, if you up my money, I will stay on for another season." That's what he said. And the head of drama says, "We haven't got the budget, John. We appreciate all you've done for us, and thank you very much." But it wasn't to do with that. It wasn't to do with the money. It was to do with basically that they wanted a change, because John had been there 5 years. So John thought, okay, I'm going then. Because there was other factors that led John to leave. The unit family was breaking up. Roger Delgado had been killed. Katie Manning had left. So he felt it was all coming to an end. So John decided it's time for him to go as well. Anyway, Elizabeth Sladen had just come in as obviously Sarah Jane, the reporter. She's debut was the Time Warrior. So anyway, John and so there wasn't much blending between John and Liz, because it was only one season. Liz would blend better with Tom Baker. So anyway, so John left, and then we get Tom Baker. Now, nobody knew how Doctor Who was going to go at this time. I didn't know how it was going to go. Like I said, I was very young. I didn't understand what regeneration meant. I didn't know what the changes were. I didn't know what was the deal of changing one face to another. But eventually, when you get older, you understand it. So I understood it in the end, but I didn't understand it at the time. So we got this guy with a big nose, black curly hair, and I was thinking, where's John Pertwee? Because I've been used to him, and this guy now was the new Doctor. I didn't realise that. I thought, where's John? He's going to come back. Where is he? Is he around there? I was looking for him all over the place on the television screen, but it wasn't about. I knew that this is what Doctor Who's about. It's about change. It was about moving in a new direction. Fair enough. So Tom Baker took it up, and unfortunately, after starting it, he made it so good. I think he made it so bloody good that the show brought on you could say unattentionable fucking bloody groups, something like appreciation bloody societies, and that's what really you could say started to go wrong for Doctor Who, because they started to get power. The actor had to, and the agents and everything, they all got involved, and then they gave them too much. In my opinion, they should have just been fans and stayed fans. None of this going to conventions. I know that's where the money's made, but I think there's a line where you should not cross, and they were crossing it. So anyway, we got to that. That's a different story altogether. The reason why Tom Baker stayed on as long as he did, I think he wanted to go after 1977 because he did 3 years, was basically he wanted to make a film with him starring as Doctor Who. And he went to approach companies, but the BBC would not let him do it, and that's what pissed Tom off. That is one of the reasons what pissed Tom off, because he wanted to do a big Doctor Who movie, which obviously got done in 1996, which wasn't very good, was it? So anyway, it doesn't matter. So anyway, Tom Baker stays on, and I think after 1977, I think Tom Baker, because he liked Philip Hinchcliffe, he worked well with him, but Philip was pushed aside. He was moved on deliberately because of the trouble Mary Whitehouse was bloody causing, saying that it's too violent for children. I mean, what planet does she come from? She's from her perspective, she comes from a bloody middle class background. So, well, middle class to upper, I reckon. A housewife that wanted to change the bloody world, basically. You know, she was a bloody anything she put her thumb's approval up, you know, would spell death to the bloody programme, and nobody would watch it. When she disapproved, that is when the programme got popular. You see, a lot of them psychologically worked that one out as well. The Goodies, I don't know if you remember them, Bill, let's see, Graham Garden, Tim Brooke Taylor and Bill Oddie were these zany free, popular comedy in the 70s, if you remember it. And Mary Whitehouse loved it. And they looked at each other and said, we've got to make this crap. We've got to make this so controversial she'll hate it, because we won't get Tom, Dick and Harry watching this show after she's given it approval. So they made it, so they deliberately went out of their way to add referencing and everything else, and then she gave it a disapproval. Bang, the goodies were popular with everybody, because she was an Achilles heel. She was basically out of date. She didn't understand how television worked and what the reasons why they were trying to project what they were doing. She was basing it on the basis that she was from the 1950s, 1940s, like when families were all together and all that. And she believed in the family unit rubbish, which we don't believe in today, obviously. Like children should be seen and not heard. She wants to mollycoddle them. And I'm thinking, my God, I'm glad she's not my bloody mum. Anyway, but yeah, that is what she did. She was basically into popularity, political platforms. That's what she did, and that's what she did, right? And she destroyed a lot of programs, and she had a bit of power. The BBC always cowered into her, and Doctor Who was dumbed down, with the violence and the darkness. It was meant to be for children, she said. I say it wasn't. I say it was for all audiences. But anyway, that's another story entirely. I'm not going to go into that. I'll just say that Philip Hinchcliffe and Terence Dicks together deliberately put a story, I think it was the Tons of Wenchang, and she went ballistic. They did it deliberately. They added quite a lot in there. As you know, it's controversial, wasn't it? And they did that deliberately. Robert Holmes wanted to go one step further. He wanted to blood eyes and falling out of people's sockets, but they wouldn't have been able to get away with that, because Philip Hinchcliffe gave Robert Holmes a free hand when it came to writing. He was very dark, I can assure you. He was the guy that wrote The Caves of Androzani, if you remember. Anyway, and many more stories. So getting to the next point, which is Tom Baker had enough. He certainly didn't get on with J&T, this new broom that was going to sweep through the bloody studios of BBC. And unfortunately, J&T, John Nathan Turner, wanted to take it in a different direction, which to me spelt death to the programme, because what his perspective on the show was basically showrunner. Showrunner means showman to him. He was, he would have been more better in the pantomime. That's where he belonged, not on a television show. He got well in with the BBC hierarchy. That's all. He was very good at PR. In my opinion, because all he was a bloody floor manager. That's a person that says, if you want cups of coffee, he's the man to sort it out for you. A sort of arbitrator bollocks. And he was very good at mirroring with people and stuff like that. But there was a bit of controversy with him. I won't go into that, because it's you could say it's the same as Jimmy Savile sort of thing. There was a controversy because you notice he was always surrounded by kids, right? And there's also allegations that his boyfriend, Gary, whatever it was, Gary Crowley, I can't remember, who was also shoehorned into the series to be some sort of location manager or something, and they were sexually assaulting, lads of 17 and stuff like that. This is the allegations that are made, but I can believe it. I haven't got no facts to prove it, but there was this book that came out about it. I read it, and it was very confounding. And there was a reason why they were grooming kids, basically. And I think the BBC got cold feet, and that's why that's why they needed to get rid of the programme. That could have been one of the reasons for that hiatus, because Michael Gray couldn't stand John Nathan Turner, so there must have been something going on there. Anyway, getting back to the point, Tom Baker didn't like John Nathan Turner, and he deliberately, this is true, he deliberately stayed on for another season to piss J&T off. And he did it, because J&T could not do anything. He couldn't go to the head of drama who employed him, because who would win, Tom or him? Tom would win, and he would lose his credibility. So he didn't do it. He just waited for Tom to just say, right, I've had enough, I'm quitting. And that's it. He did. He quit. And that was the end of that. And I thought that was the end of the show. I thought, Tom Baker's gone. There's no other actors out there going to do his job. Who's going to follow in the footsteps of Tom Baker after all he's done for the 7 years of the programme? You just felt that there's going to be a massive void here. So they've gone for Peter Davison. Peter Davison, J&T had worked with Peter Davison, so he knew Peter Davison very well. We all knew Peter Davison. If you watch All Creatures Great and Small, I was a fan of it, you'd know who he is. He played Tristan. He was the brother of Siegfried, who played by Robert Hardy. Anyway, so Peter Davison accepts the role. The PR's all ready to go. The problem was he was a young doctor at the time. He was very young. He was in his 30s, I think he was, early 30s, maybe mid 30s. He was younger than Tom Baker when he started. When he started at 40, I think. So anyway, Peter Davison takes the role, and we get a good professional actor job. He is a very good actor, professionally good. But unfortunately, you need more than that. But not saying Peter Davison did a bad job. It wasn't his fault. Again, it was the bad writing. It was the bad writing, the bad fucking plots. And sadly for Peter, he didn't nail the actual bloody doctor till the case of Angiosani. That emphasises what his doctor was. But by then he'd left. He was leaving the show, and then Nicola Paget came into it, didn't she? I wasn't too keen on Janet Fielding as a character. I certainly didn't like Adric. I thought he was wooden, robot. And I think Tom Baker didn't really like him either. He just didn't want to, when they were doing rehearsals, he went out for a pint. I'm going down to the pub for a pint. But I've done my lines. I don't want to worry about what they get up to. I know my part. I know what I'm doing, he says. And that's it. So he went. And that's another thing that pissed JNT off. He just didn't hang around. So anyway, we come to Peter Davison. He's coming to the end of his career. He said he met He met Patrick Troughton in the car park one day while he was Doctor Who, and he said Patrick said to him, "If I were you, I'd do 3 years in Doctor Who, then get out, like I did when I was doing it." I said, because there's a danger you're going to be stereotyped in the cast. You're going to be typecast in it. You'll find it hard to get other roles because people will still have the image of you as Doctor Who. And he was right. He did, and he did 3 years, and he got out. So anyway, Peter Davison leaves, and then comes Colin Baker. So anyway, I'm going to leave this. This is part one. I'm going to do another one as soon as this video is finished. So tune in to my YouTube channel where this is going on, and we'll come back to Colin Baker when I return. Anyway, look after yourselves, and bye for now.